It was just another ordinary Tuesday evening in our household, the kind where you're winding down from the day's work, thinking about what to cook for dinner, and maybe catch up on some TV shows you've missed. Mike, my husband of 20 years, was lounging on the sofa, flicking through channels, while I was in the kitchen pondering whether spaghetti or chicken salad would be the lesser of two evils for our waistlines. I was thinking about what our 19-year-old son Alex eats in college. That's when the phone rang, cutting through the mundane silence of our home. Mike glanced at the caller ID and sighed. "It's my folks." There was a hint of reluctance in his voice that didn't go unnoticed. "Go on, pick it up." "It's been ages since we last heard from them," I called out from the kitchen, trying to sound more enthusiastic than I felt. Mike's parents, Linda and George, weren't exactly the easiest people to get along with. Their rare calls usually meant they wanted something. Mike pressed the speaker button, and we both braced ourselves. "Hey, Mom, Dad, what's up?" The voice that came through was Linda's, choked with tears. "Oh, Mike, it's all gone. Everything's gone." George's gruffer, more panicked tone interjected. "The company, son. It tanked. We've lost the house, the cars, everything." I stopped what I was doing, the gravity of their situation sinking in. Mike and I exchanged worried glances. Despite our strained relationship, hearing them so vulnerable struck a chord. "So, what's the plan now? Where are you guys staying?" Mike asked, his voice tight with concern. "That's just it, son. We have nowhere to go. We were hoping, maybe, we could come stay with you and Karine for a while." Linda's voice was hopeful, yet hesitant. Mike ran a hand through his hair, a clear sign he was stressed. "Well, you know the house is actually Karine's, left to her by her grandma. I gotta talk to her about it." I knew what was coming next. As much as Linda and George could be a handful, they were still his parents. Turning them away wasn't an option, not really. I walked into the living room, taking the phone from Mike. "Linda, George, listen, we can figure something out. But it's only temporary, okay? Just until you get back on your feet." "Oh, thank you, dear. You're a lifesaver. We won't be any trouble, promise," Linda gushed, relief evident in her voice. After we hung up, Mike slumped back on the couch, a mix of emotions playing across his face. "Babe, you sure about this? You know how they are. Always looking down on our lifestyle, expecting the moon." I sighed, sitting next to him, taking his hand. I know. But they're your folks. What else can we do? We'll set some ground rules. Make it clear it's just for a few months." Mike nodded, looking somewhat relieved, but still anxious. "They mentioned bringing some things. I hope it's not their entire house." The morning Linda and George were due to arrive felt like the calm before the storm. Mike and I had been up since dawn, double-checking every room to ensure everything was as comfortable as possible. Our attempt to bring some order before the inevitable chaos. "Karine, do you think they'll like the setup in their room?" Mike asked for what felt like the 10th time, his forehead creased with worry. I shrugged, adjusting a pillow for the umpteenth time. "They'll have to. It's not the Ritz, but it's the best we can do." The sound of engines rumbling down our street cut our conversation short. We exchanged a look that said, "Here we go," and made our way to the front door. As we stepped outside, two massive moving trucks pulled up, blocking our driveway. Jesus, did they bring the whole house? I muttered under my breath as Mike squeezed my hand, a silent plea for patience. Linda and George emerged from a sleek rental car, looking every bit the displaced royalty. Linda, with her fur coat draped over her shoulders despite the mild weather, and George, in a suit that looked too formal for our quiet, suburban street. "Karine, Mike. Oh, how we've missed you!" Linda exclaimed, embracing me with a force that nearly knocked the wind out of me. "Good to see you, Mom, Dad," Mike managed, his voice tight as he accepted their hugs. As the movers began unloading, the sheer volume of some things they'd mentioned became horrifyingly clear. Furniture, boxes, more boxes, and endless bags started piling up in our driveway. Mike and I helped direct the movers, but it quickly became apparent that our house was not prepared for the influx. Every room on the ground floor was soon crowded with their belongings, leaving just narrow paths to navigate through. As the movers left, George clapped his hands together, looking pleased. "Well, this feels homier already, doesn't it?" That evening, after a day of moving and rearranging, we sat down for dinner. The air was thick with tension, an uncomfortable blend of gratitude and resentment simmering just below the surface. "So, Karine, this spaghetti is interesting," Linda remarked, poking at her plate with a fork as if she expected it to bite back. "It's a family recipe," I replied, trying to keep my voice even. "Simple but good." Was all she said, but her expression spoke volumes. Mike, sensing my growing frustration, jumped in. "Mom, Dad, we're really glad we could help out in your time of need. But we need to remember we're all in this together. It's going to be a bit of an adjustment for everyone." The conversation stumbled along, a clumsy dance around the obvious elephants in the room. After dinner, as we were clearing the table, Mike pulled me aside. "Karine, this is going to be harder than we thought," he whispered, his eyes filled with concern. I sighed, leaning into him. "We knew it wouldn't be easy. But we'll make it work. Somehow." The initial excitement of Linda and George's arrival quickly faded, replaced by the daily grind and growing tensions. It wasn't long before their true colors started to show, and with it, the first of many demands. One morning, barely a week into their stay, I was in the kitchen whipping up what I considered a decent breakfast: scrambled eggs, toast, and some fresh fruit on the side. Simple, yet filling. That's when Linda strolled in, a look of disdain plastered across her face as she eyed the plates on the counter. "Karine, darling, is this what you call breakfast?" she asked, her voice dripping with condescension. I turned, forcing a smile. "It's what we usually have. Keeps us going until lunch." Linda scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. No, this won't do at all." Back in our house, we had freshly squeezed orange juice, croissants, and sometimes even smoked salmon for breakfast. "You must try a bit harder, dear." I felt a knot form in my stomach, frustration bubbling up. "Linda, you know we're not living in luxury here. This is what we eat. If you'd like something else, you're welcome to make it." The rest of the meal passed in awkward silence, the air thick with unspoken words. Mike caught my eye, giving me a sympathetic look that said he'd handle it later. But breakfast was just the beginning. Later that week, George approached me as I was sorting the laundry, a list in hand. "Karine, we need to talk about the groceries. This list here," he said, waving the paper in front of me, "is what Linda and I usually enjoy. We've been very accommodating, but it's time we return to some semblance of our normal lifestyle." I took the list, my eyes widening as I scanned the items. Marbled steaks, exotic fruits, imported cheeses. The price of these items would blow our grocery budget out of the water. "George, you do realize we're on a budget, right? We can't afford these things on a regular basis." He frowned, crossing his arms. "Well, you'll just have to make do, won't you? We can't be expected to live like this. It's beneath us." I was at a loss for words. The audacity of their demands, their complete disregard for our situation, it was all too much. That night, I vented to Mike, my patience wearing thin. He promised he would talk to them. But talking seemed to do little good. Linda and George remained firmly planted in their bubble of entitlement, making life increasingly difficult for us. The breaking point came when Linda refused to eat the chicken casserole I had prepared for dinner, calling it peasant food. She demanded we order takeout from a pricey restaurant instead. "Listen, Linda, we're doing our best here," I snapped, my patience finally gone. "This is what we're having. If you don't like it, then I'm sorry, but that's just too bad." Her face went red, and for a moment, I thought she might actually explode. This is no way to treat your guests, Karine. We are your elders, and you should be showing us more respect. Mike stepped in, his tone firm. Mom, Dad, you're not guests. You're living here because you have nowhere else to go. Karine's right. We can't afford to eat out or buy expensive groceries. You need to respect that this is our home and our rules. The conversation ended with Linda storming off to her room, George following closely behind, muttering about ungrateful children. A whole month had gone by since Linda and George turned our lives upside down. It started with them making a scene at breakfast one morning, both of them clutching their stomachs and making a big show of how our average food was wreaking havoc on their digestion. This bread, it's like eating cardboard. And don't get me started on the eggs. My stomach's been in knots. Linda complained, her voice teetering between a whine and a demand. George chimed in with a groan, I haven't felt right since we got here. We need proper food, not this peasant fare. Feeling cornered and wanting to keep the peace, I caved. I started buying the fanciest groceries I could find for them, while Mike and I resorted to fast food just to save on costs. Fast forward a month, and I'm sitting at the kitchen table, receipts scattered in front of me. My heart sank as I tallied up the numbers. We were spending double on groceries compared to before Linda and George's arrival. And that wasn't even touching on the water bill, which had skyrocketed thanks to Linda's newfound love for long, luxurious baths. Enough was enough. That evening, as I served dinner, the contrast couldn't have been starker. Linda and George were tucking into their gourmet dishes, while Mike and I nibbled on cheap takeout. My frustration boiled over. Listen up, I started, my voice steady but firm. This can't go on. We're blowing through our budget trying to cater to your tastes. From now on, we're all eating the same food. No more special treatment. Linda looked up, her fork paused midair. You can't be serious. This food is the only thing keeping our health from plummeting in this hovel. George nodded in agreement. Exactly. You expect us to eat fast food? That's absurd. You're being incredibly selfish and lazy, Karine. Their words stung, but I was past caring about their opinions. Before I could retort, Mike slammed his fist down on the table, a rare show of anger from him. That's enough, he barked. You're living under our roof, in Karine's house. You will show her respect. She's been bending over backward to accommodate you, and this is how you repay her? No more. Either you start eating what we provide, or you can find somewhere else to live. The room went silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Linda and George exchanged a look, then silently returned to their meal. The day after the big blow-up, things escalated in a way I couldn't have imagined. It started with a knock at the door, mid-morning. I was in the middle of tidying up the living room, Mike having gone out to run some errands. The delivery guy, a young lad probably in his early 20s, stood there with a smirk, holding a stack of fancy-looking food boxes. Delivery for Karine, he announced, thrusting the boxes into my arms before I could even open my mouth. Confused, I stared down at the assortment of gourmet meals, the kind that cost an arm and a leg from the high-end place downtown. There's been some mistake. I didn't order this. Just then, Linda breezed in, a smug smile on her face. Oh, those are for us. I couldn't stomach another day of that dreadful food you've been serving. I was flabbergasted. And how do you plan on paying for this? I asked, trying to keep my cool. Linda waved a dismissive hand. Oh, don't worry, dear. It's on you. Consider it a thank you for our stay. Fury bubbled up inside me, but before I could confront her further, the phone rang. It was Mike, checking in. I quickly explained the situation, my voice shaking with anger. Stay calm. I'll handle it when I get back, he said, his tone tight with frustration. But staying calm was easier said than done. By the time Mike got back, Linda and George had made themselves comfortable, devouring their expensive meals with relish while I fumed silently. That evening, Mike and I sat them down for another talk. This time, the gloves were off. "Mom, Dad, this has got to stop," Mike began, his voice low but firm. "You can't just order expensive meals on our dime. It's not right." George scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "Oh, please. It's the least you can do after forcing us to eat like paupers." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Forcing you? We're going broke trying to keep you happy." Linda's eyes narrowed. "Well, maybe if you managed your money better, you wouldn't be in this situation." That did it. I lost my cool. Managed our money better? We were fine before you showed up, turning our lives upside down. Mike stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "That's it. We've been more than accommodating, but it's clear you have no respect for us or our home. You need to leave." Their reaction was immediate and explosive. Linda started crying, wailing about how ungrateful we were, while George shouted threats about telling everyone how horribly we'd treated them. The argument raged on, voices raised, accusations flying. It was a mess. In the end, Linda and George stormed off to their room, slamming the door behind them. After the debacle with the gourmet food delivery, things went from bad to unbearable. Linda and George's entitlement had reached new heights, and Mike and I were at our wits' end. The final straw came on a chilly Thursday evening. I was in the kitchen, trying to make do with what was left in the pantry for dinner, when Linda sauntered in, her nose wrinkled in disgust at the aroma of the stew I was cooking. "That smells, what is that?" she asked, her tone dripping with disdain. "It's beef stew." "It's what's for dinner," I replied, keeping my focus on the pot to avoid snapping at her. Linda made a show of gagging. "I can't possibly eat that. You know, it wouldn't kill you to try a little harder, Karine. This is no way to treat guests." Dinner was a tense affair, with Linda and George barely touching their food while making passive-aggressive comments about the lack of variety. I was seething, but I bit my tongue, determined not to let them get the best of me. After dinner, Mike and I were cleaning up when Linda approached us, a smug look on her face. "I've been thinking," she began, "with the holidays coming up, it would be nice to have a new coat. Something warm and stylish." I stopped in my tracks, staring at her in disbelief. "A new coat? With what money, Linda?" "Oh, I thought you could use the money you've set aside for, what was it?" "Oh, yes, your son's college fund." That was it. The last straw. Without hesitation, I picked up the phone and called the one person I knew could turn the tide, my grandmother. Gran, despite her age and residing in a nursing home, had always been the matriarch of our family, her word law. After I spilled out the whole sorry saga, she huffed in disbelief. "This nonsense has gone on long enough," Gran declared, her voice crackling with resolve over the phone. "I'm coming to stay for a bit. We'll sort this mess out together." True to her word, a couple of days later, Gran arrived, wheelchair and all, ready to reclaim her territory. As she rolled into the living room, commandeering the space with her presence, Linda and George looked on in shock. "I'll be staying on the ground floor," Gran announced, scanning the room filled with Linda and George's belongings. "So, all this," she waved a dismissive hand around, "needs to go upstairs." Linda's face turned a shade of red I didn't know was possible. "You can't just come in and demand." Gran cut her off with a look that could freeze lava. "This house? It's still mine. Karine and Mike are here because I allow it. And that means I can kick you out whenever I please." The threat hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Within hours, Linda and George were scrambling to call movers, their complaints and protests drowned out by Gran's unwavering stance. As their furniture and countless boxes were hauled up the stairs, Gran turned to me, a twinkle in her eye. "Now, let's see if they still feel entitled to steak dinners and new coats." Gran's strategic maneuvering had just begun to unfold in our household. The air was charged with anticipation as we gathered in the living room, the scent of freshly brewed tea mingling with the tension. "Now," Gran began, her voice steady, we need to address the matter of rent." Linda scoffed, crossing her arms. "Rent? Why should we pay rent when Karine and Mike don't?" Gran smiled, a glint in her eye. "Karine and Mike live here under my grace. They contribute to the household in many ways. But you two," she paused, her gaze sharpening, "have been living off their generosity without giving much in return. I think a rent of $4,000 a month would be appropriate." George's face went ashen. $4,000? That's outrageous. We're retired, we don't have that kind of money. Gran leaned forward, her expression unyielding. "Considering the lavish meals and the luxurious lifestyle you seem accustomed to, I'd say you can afford it." Linda, her voice trembling with indignation, turned to me. "Karine, surely you don't agree with this extortion?" Before I could reply, Gran interjected. "It's not extortion, Linda. It's about fairness. But I'm willing to negotiate." She paused, a sly smile playing on her lips. "If you're willing to help take care of me during your stay, push my wheelchair around, make breakfast, help with my bath, I might consider reducing the rent." The suggestion hung in the air, heavy and unappealing to Linda and George, who exchanged a look of utter disbelief. George, ever the pragmatist, asked, "And how much would this assistance reduce the rent?" Gran tapped her chin, pretending to ponder. "Let's say, down to $2,000, provided the help is substantial and consistent." Linda's mouth dropped open, but before she could protest, George cut in. "And if we refuse?" Gran's response was swift and final. "Then you're welcome to find somewhere else to live. This house," she gestured around, "will no longer be your refuge." The ultimatum was clear. Linda and George, faced with the prospect of actually working or paying a hefty rent, seemed to shrink in their seats. The following days were a flurry of hushed conversations and frantic phone calls as they scrambled to find an alternative. Eventually, they announced they had found a small apartment and would be moving out immediately. The process was swift, their belongings packed and removed with a speed that suggested eagerness to leave the situation behind. As their car disappeared down the driveway, Gran turned to Mike and me, her expression softening. "I know it was tough, but it was necessary. You two need your space, and they need to stand on their own." Mike wrapped an arm around Gran, gratitude in his eyes. "Gran, you've done more for us than we could ever repay. Thank you." In the weeks that followed, Gran became more than just a guest, she was a guardian of our home's harmony, a role she played with a blend of sternness and love that only she could manage. In the calm that followed Linda and George moving out, our house felt like it was finally breathing again. Gran, Mike, and I gathered in the living room one night, the gentle hum of the evening wrapping around us, making the space feel sacred after the storm we'd weathered. Breaking the quiet, Gran's tone turned playful. "Well, as much as I've enjoyed the drama, I think it's time for me to head back. The nursing home misses its most troublesome resident." Mike and I shared a look, already dreading her departure. "Gran, this house is always open for you. It's not really home without you," I managed, my voice heavy with emotion. Gran gave my hand a squeeze. "And you're always in my heart. But don't worry, I'll be back to stir things up now and then." We laughed together, a sound that felt like healing. As we said our goodbyes to Gran the next day, watching her taxi disappear, Mike and I knew we were ready for whatever came next. Together. Our home, once a battlefield, was now a symbol of our resilience, a place where love and boundaries found their balance. And as we stepped back into the quiet of our living room, ready to face the future, I felt deeply thankful for the journey that had brought us here, for the family we were, and for the lessons we'd carry forward. A few weeks later, we heard from a mutual acquaintance that Linda and George were living in a small apartment, having sold most of their belongings to cover their debts. The news came as a bittersweet confirmation of the new chapter they, too, were embarking on, a life defined by the consequences of their choices, leaning on each other, perhaps for the first time in a long while. Reflecting on this, Mike and I realized the true depth of the changes we'd all undergone. Our home was peaceful once more, and though the journey had been rough, it had taught us the true meaning of family, resilience, and love.
The phone rings, jolting me out of my thoughts. I glance at the caller ID and freeze. It's Sadie, my daughter-in-law. My stomach twists into knots as I hesitate, my finger hovering over the answer button. Why would she be calling me out of the blue like this? We've barely spoken since the falling out with my son Jack. I take a deep breath and answer, trying to keep my voice steady. Hello? Meredith, hi. Sadie's overly cheerful voice grates on my nerves. I'm so glad I caught you. Listen, Jack and I were hoping you could come over for dinner tonight. We have something special planned. I frown, immediately suspicious. Dinner? Tonight? Isn't this a bit last minute? I know, I'm sorry, Sadie gushes. It's just that we have some exciting news to share, and we really want you to be a part of it. Please say you'll come. I hesitate, my mind racing. It's been months since I've seen my granddaughter, Avery. Not since I confronted Sadie about the bruises I found on Avery's arms. Bruises I'm convinced Sadie caused. But when I reported my suspicions, Sadie twisted everything around, making me look like a mentally unstable grandmother. The authorities found no proof. In the end, Jack believed his manipulative wife's lies over his own mother's concerns. The painful memories flashed through my mind. Marrying my college sweetheart Tom, the love of my life. Raising our twin boys Jack and Liam, the lights of our lives. Becoming a young widow far too soon when a drunk driver stole Tom away. Pouring my grief into building a successful catering business to support my sons. The joy of becoming a grandmother when Jack and his new wife Sadie had little Avery. And then the mounting dread as my instincts screamed that something was wrong. The way Avery flinched from Sadie's touch, the mysterious injuries Sadie couldn't explain. My world crumbling as everyone turned against me for trying to protect my granddaughter. Meredith, are you still there? Sadie's insistent voice snaps me back to the present. I close my eyes briefly, steeling myself. As much as it pains me, I can't pass up this chance to see Avery. To make sure she's okay, even if I have to play nice with Sadie to do it. Yes, I'm here, I reply, forcing a neutral tone. Dinner sounds lovely. What time should I be there? After noting down the details and ending the call, I lean back in my chair, my heart heavy. I have a bad feeling about this sudden invitation. In my bones, I know Sadie is up to something. I just pray that whatever it is won't put Avery in harm's way again. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I grab my purse and keys. If Sadie thinks she can fool me twice, she's got another thing coming. This time, I'll be ready for her games. This time, I won't let her hurt the ones I love most. Not again, not ever. It's been 3 months since that uncomfortable dinner at Jack and Sadie's house. 3 months of walking on eggshells, trying to maintain a relationship with my granddaughter Avery while tiptoeing around Sadie's mercurial moods. I've been watching her like a hawk, but Sadie's a master at putting on a show when others are around. Today, Sadie called me in a panic, begging me to watch Avery while she runs off to yet another last-minute audition. She's been chasing her failed acting dreams for years, constantly leaving Avery in my care with barely a moment's notice. I don't mind spending time with my granddaughter, but I worry about the instability Sadie brings to her life. When I arrive at their house, Sadie practically shoves Avery into my arms, already halfway out the door. Thanks so much, Meredith. You're a lifesaver. She calls over her shoulder before peeling out of the driveway. I sigh and look down at Avery, who clings to me tightly. My heart clenches as I notice a fresh bruise peeking out from under her sleeve. Gently, I pull back the fabric to get a better look. Avery, sweetie, how did you get this owie? I ask, keeping my voice soft and non-threatening. Avery's eyes fill with tears. I fell down. The rehearsed response sets off alarm bells in my head. Kneeling down to Avery's level, I take her tiny hands in mine. Avery, you know you can tell Grandma Murmur anything, right? I'm here to keep you safe. Avery hesitates, glancing around fearfully as if Sadie might pop out any second. Then in a whisper she confesses, Mommy gets mad sometimes. She grabs my arm too hard. White-hot rage courses through my veins, but I force myself to stay calm for Avery's sake. Thank you for telling me the truth, brave girl. I won't let Mommy hurt you anymore. That evening, I confront Sadie the moment she returns. I lay out the evidence of Avery's injuries and repeat what Avery told me. But Sadie just laughs in my face. You're being paranoid, Meredith. Avery's a clumsy child, and you know how kids exaggerate, she scoffs, rolling her eyes. I know what I saw, Sadie. If you ever lay a hand on Avery again, I swear I'll... Sadie cuts me off, her eyes flashing with malice. You'll what? Who do you think Jack will believe? His devoted wife or his crazy old mother? I can ruin you, Meredith. I can make sure you never see Avery again. Her words knock the wind out of me. I know she's capable of following through on her threats. I've seen how she's wrapped Jack around her finger, poisoning him against me. In a last-ditch effort, I call Child Services to report Sadie's abuse. But just as Sadie predicted, they find no concrete proof. It's my word against hers. And when Jack finds out about the investigation, he's furious. How could you accuse Sadie of something so horrible? She's an amazing mother, he shouts, pacing angrily in front of me. Jack, please, I'm telling you the truth. Sadie is not who you think she is, I plead, desperate for him to see reason. But Sadie has already gotten to him. No, Mom, Sadie's right. You're unhinged. You need help. The betrayal cuts deep. My own son, siding with his abusive wife over his own mother. I can hardly breathe through the pain. In the end, Sadie makes good on her threats. She slaps me with a restraining order, banning me from seeing Avery. Jack cuts me out of his life completely, believing Sadie's lies about my supposed mental instability. Alone in my house, I crumple to the floor, my heart shattered beyond repair. How did it come to this? How did I let Sadie destroy my family? But even as despair threatens to swallow me whole, a flicker of determination sparks to life in my chest. I won't let Sadie win. I won't let her corrupt my granddaughter. Somehow, some way, I will find a way to expose her true colors and save Avery, no matter the cost. Months drag by, each day a painful reminder of the gaping hole in my heart where Avery used to be. The restraining order Sadie slapped me with keeps me away from my granddaughter, and Jack refuses to take my calls. I feel like I'm drowning in a sea of helplessness and despair. But even in my darkest moments, I refuse to give up. I hire a private investigator to dig into Sadie's past, desperate for any shred of evidence that might expose her true nature. What the PI uncovers makes my blood run cold. Sadie, it turns out, has a history of latching on to wealthy men, bleeding them dry, and then moving on to her next target. She's left a trail of broken hearts and empty bank accounts in her wake, and now she's set her sights on my son. Armed with this new information, I confront Liam, Jack's twin brother. I know he's always had a soft spot for Sadie, but surely he can't condone her behavior. Liam, please, you have to help me. Sadie is bad news. She's hurting Avery and using Jack for his money, I plead, showing him the evidence the PI gathered. Liam shifts uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. I don't know, Mom. Sadie's always been good to me. Maybe you're just overreacting. Frustration boils up inside me. Open your eyes, Liam. She's manipulating you, just like she's manipulating Jack. Can't you see that? But Liam just shakes his head, backing away. I'm sorry, Mom. I can't get involved. This is between you and Sadie. I watch him walk away, my heart sinking. Even my own flesh and blood won't stand up for what's right. Desperate, I turn to Jack, hoping that the proof of Sadie's financial infidelity will be enough to snap him out of her spell. I corner him at his office, laying out the documents that show Sadie has been siphoning money from his company to fund her lavish lifestyle. Jack's face hardens as he flips through the papers. For a moment, I think I've finally gotten through to him. But then Sadie bursts in, crocodile tears streaming down her face. Jack, baby, don't listen to her. She's crazy, remember? She's just trying to tear us apart. Sadie wails, clinging to Jack's arm. Jack hesitates, glancing between me and Sadie. I hold my breath, praying he'll finally see the truth. But Sadie's hold on him is too strong. Jack's expression turns to one of disgust as he throws the documents back at me. Enough, Mom. I'm sick of your lies and manipulations. Sadie is my wife, and I trust her completely. I want you out of my life, for good this time. His words hit me like a physical blow. I stumble back, my vision blurring with tears. Jack, please, I'm just trying to protect you. To protect Avery, I whisper, my voice cracking. But Jack is already turning away, his arm around Sadie's shoulders. Stay away from my family, Mom. I mean it. You're dead to me. The world tilts on its axis as I watch my son walk away, choosing his abuser over his own mother. The pain is too much to bear. I clutch at my chest, gasping for air as a searing agony rips through me. The last thing I remember before everything goes black is the sound of Sadie's mocking laughter echoing in my ears. I wake up in a hospital bed, hooked up to beeping machines. The doctors tell me I suffered a severe heart attack brought on by stress and emotional trauma. They urge me to rest to avoid any further upsets. But how can I rest when my granddaughter is still in danger, when my own sons have turned their backs on me? Staring at the sterile white ceiling, I make a vow to myself. No matter what it takes, no matter how long, I will find a way to save Avery and expose Sadie for the monster she truly is, even if it destroys me in the process. A year has passed since my heart attack, a year of painful isolation and unanswered questions. Jack and Liam remain stubbornly out of reach, and every attempt to contact Avery is met with stony silence. The ache in my chest has nothing to do with my physical health and everything to do with the gaping hole where my family used to be. So when Sadie shows up on my doorstep one rainy evening, bruised and sobbing, I'm equal parts shocked and wary. She collapses into my arms, her body shaking with tremors. "Meredith, please, you have to help me. Jack, he's out of control. He's been hitting me, and I'm afraid he's going to hurt Avery next," she gasps out between hiccuping breaths. I stiffen, my mind reeling. Could I have been wrong all this time? Could Jack, my gentle, loving son, truly be capable of such violence? I didn't know where else to go. "I'm so sorry for everything, for turning Jack against you. I was just scared," Sadie whimpers, clinging to me like a lifeline. Against my better judgment, I find myself softening. The bruises on her face and arms look all too real, and the terror in her eyes is palpable. "Shh, it's okay. You're safe now," I murmur, guiding her into the house. Over the next few days, as Sadie hides out in my guest room, she spins a tale of horror and abuse that makes my stomach churn. She describes how Jack flew into a rage when she confronted him about his drinking, how he slammed her against the wall and choked her until she blacked out. She shows me the finger-shaped bruises on her throat, the cigarette burns on her thighs. "He said he'd kill me if I ever left him, Meredith. He said he'd make sure I never saw Avery again," Sadie confesses, her voice hollow with despair. But doubt gnaws at me, warring with the instinct to protect. I think back to all the times I suspected Sadie of hurting Avery, of manipulating Jack. Could I have misjudged her so badly? Sadie seems to sense my hesitation. She takes my hands in hers, her eyes shimmering with tears. "I know I've given you every reason not to trust me, Meredith, but I swear I'm telling you the truth. Jack is a monster, and Avery and I need your help to escape him." Looking into her pleading face, I make a decision. I can't turn my back on her, not if there's even a chance that Avery is in danger. Over the next few weeks, as Sadie and I grow closer, I start to question everything I thought I knew. She's so different from the cold, calculating woman I once believed her to be. She's vulnerable, broken, desperate for a mother's love and guidance. I find myself opening up to her, sharing stories of Jack and Liam's childhood, of my own struggles as a young widow. Sadie listens intently, offering comfort and understanding in return. For the first time in longer than I can remember, I don't feel so alone. But even as I start to let my guard down, nagging doubts persist. Something about Sadie's story doesn't quite add up. The way she flinches at odd moments, the inconsistencies in her timeline. I try to push my suspicions aside, telling myself I'm just being paranoid. Until the day I accidentally overhear a phone call that shatters everything. Sadie is in the guest room, the door cracked open, just a sliver. Her voice floats out, low and urgent. "I can't keep this up much longer, Liam." She's starting to ask too many questions. We need to move forward with the plan before she figures out what's really going on. Ice floods my veins as the truth hits me like a sledgehammer. Sadie hasn't changed at all. She's been playing me for a fool, just like she played Jack. And now she's plotting with my own son to destroy what's left of my family. Betrayal tastes like ashes in my mouth as I confront the ugly truth. Sadie, the woman I've opened my home and heart to, is nothing more than a viper in sheep's clothing. The bruises, the tears, the tales of abuse, all a carefully crafted lie to manipulate me. I think back to all the inconsistencies in her story, the nagging doubts I pushed aside in my desperation to believe her. How could I have been so blind? Determined to uncover the full extent of her deception, I wait until Sadie leaves for one of her mysterious errands and slip into the guest room. It doesn't take long to find what I'm looking for. A small memory card tucked inside her jewelry box. With shaking hands, I insert the card into my laptop. The screen fills with video after damning video of Sadie coaching Avery, my sweet, innocent granddaughter, to lie. Remember, Avery, when Grandma asks about the bruises, you say Daddy did it. You say he hits you and Mommy, okay? Sadie's sickly sweet voice makes my stomach turn. Avery, her eyes wide and confused, nods obediently. Daddy hits me and Mommy. Bile rises in my throat as the truth sinks in. Sadie has been orchestrating this whole charade, using her own daughter as a pawn in her twisted game, and I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. I'm so engrossed in the horrifying footage that I don't hear Sadie return until it's too late. She bursts into the room, her face twisting with rage when she sees what I'm watching. You nosy bitch, you just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? She snarls, lunging for the laptop. I jerk it out of her reach, my own anger boiling over. How could you, Sadie? How could you use your own child like this? Avery deserves so much better than a mother like you. Sadie throws her head back and laughs, the sound chilling me to the bone. Oh, spare me the righteous indignation, Meredith. You're just as pathetic as the rest of them, so desperate for love, for family, that you'll believe anything I say. She stalks closer, her eyes glittering with malice. You want to know the truth? Fine. I never loved Jack. I never loved Avery. They were just means to an end, a way to get what I wanted. I recoil in horror, my heart breaking for my son, for my granddaughter. And what is it you want, Sadie? Money? Power? Sadie smirks, her lips curling into a cruel sneer. All of the above, and more. I want to destroy you, Meredith. I want to take everything you love and burn it to the ground, just like you tried to do to me. The pieces click into place with sickening clarity. All the lies, the manipulation, the abuse, it was all a twisted form of revenge, a way to punish me for seeing through her facade. You're sick, Sadie. You need help, I whisper, backing away slowly. Sadie's eyes narrow, her gaze locking onto the laptop clutched to my chest. Give me the memory card, Meredith. Give it to me, and maybe I'll let you live. But I'm done being her victim, her pawn. I've spent too long letting her control me, letting her poison my family. In one swift motion, I yank the memory card from the laptop and shove it down my shirt, into my bra. Sadie shrieks with fury, launching herself at me like a rabid animal. We grapple on the floor, a tangle of clawing fingers and flying fists. Sadie is younger, stronger, fueled by a manic rage. But I have something she doesn't, a mother's love, a grandmother's fierce determination to protect her own. I manage to grab a heavy paperweight from the desk, slamming it against Sadie's temple with all my might. She crumples to the ground, blood trickling from the gash on her head. For a moment I'm frozen, staring at her unconscious form in shock. Then, with trembling fingers, I reach for my phone and dial 911. I need the police, right away. I have evidence of a crime. Please hurry. As sirens wail in the distance, I slump against the wall, my heart racing. I know the battle is far from over, but for the first time in years, I feel a flicker of hope. Sadie's reign of terror ends today. I'll make sure of it. The memory card feels like a lead weight against my chest as I watch Sadie's unconscious form, waiting for the police to arrive. Part of me is tempted to flee, to take the evidence and run. But I know I can't do that. I have to see this through, for Avery's sake. With shaking hands, I retrieve my phone and start recording. If Sadie wakes up, I need her confession on tape. I need irrefutable proof of her crimes. Minutes tick by, each one feeling like an eternity. Just as I'm about to give up hope, Sadie stirs, groaning as she clutches her bleeding head. You fucking bitch, she hisses, struggling to sit up. You're going to pay for that. I keep the camera trained on her, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through my veins. It's over, Sadie. The police are on their way. They'll see the videos of you coaching Avery to lie. They'll know what you did. Sadie's eyes widen, then narrow into slits. You think you're so clever, don't you? Playing the victim, the concerned grandmother, but you're just as twisted as I am, Meredith. You're the one who turned your own sons against each other. You're the one who couldn't let go, couldn't accept that Jack chose me over you. I flinch at her words, the grain of truth in them stinging like salt in a wound. I may have made mistakes, Sadie, but I never abused a child. I never manipulated and lied and cheated like you. Sadie lets out a harsh bark of laughter. Oh, but you did. You lied to yourself every single day. You pretended to be this perfect, loving mother, when in reality, you were just a pathetic old woman desperate for attention. She staggers to her feet, her face twisted into a grotesque mask of hatred. You want my confession? Fine. I did it. I coached Avery to say Jack abused her. I siphoned money from his company. I fucked his brother. And I'd do it all again just to see the look on your face when you realized you'd lost everything. Nausea churns in my gut at the sheer depravity of her words. Why, Sadie? Why go to such lengths to destroy my family? Sadie's lips curl into a sneer. Because I could. Because it was easy. Because none of you ever saw me coming. She takes a step forward, her eyes glinting with a manic light. And now I'm going to make sure you never tell anyone what you know. Fear lances through me as Sadie lunges, her hands outstretched like claws. I dodge to the side, but not fast enough. She catches me by the hair, yanking me backwards. We tumble to the ground, my phone skittering out of reach. Sadie straddles my chest, her fingers wrapping around my throat. You should have minded your own business, you meddling cunt, she snarls, tightening her grip. Black spots dance across my vision as I gasp for air. I claw at Sadie's hands, but she's too strong, too fueled by rage and desperation. Just as I'm about to black out, the door bursts open. Sadie's weight is suddenly gone, replaced by blessed oxygen flooding my lungs. Through blurry eyes, I see Jack hauling Sadie off me, his face a mask of fury. Get off her, you psychotic bitch! Sadie shrieks and thrashes in his grip, spitting curses. I'll kill you! I'll kill all of you! But Jack doesn't let go. He wrestles her to the ground, pinning her arms behind her back. It's over, Sadie. I know everything. I heard your confession. The police are on their way, he says, his voice shaking with emotion. Sadie goes limp, her fight draining away as the reality of her situation sinks in. You set me up. You knew I'd come here. Jack nods, his jaw tight. I've been onto you for months, Sadie. I just needed proof. And thanks to my mother, now I have it. He looks up at me, his eyes shining with tears. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I let her tear our family apart. Sobs rack my chest as I crawl towards my son, my baby boy. He gathers me into his arms, holding me tight as the sound of sirens fills the air. It's okay, Mom. It's over now. She can't hurt us anymore. And for the first time in years, I believe him. The aftermath of Sadie's arrest is a whirlwind of police statements, media scrutiny, and legal proceedings. Through it all, Jack remains by my side, a steadfast presence as we navigate the fallout of his wife's betrayal. I'm so sorry, Mom, he says for the 100th time, his eyes haunted by guilt and regret. I should have listened to you from the start. I should have seen through her lies. I squeeze his hand, offering what comfort I can. You couldn't have known, Jack. Sadie fooled us all. The important thing is that we're together now, and Avery is safe. At the mention of his daughter, Jack's face crumples. I failed her, Mom. I failed my own child. What kind of father am I? The kind who loves his daughter enough to admit his mistakes and fight for her, I say firmly. Avery is lucky to have you, Jack. Don't ever doubt that. As the days turn into weeks, the true extent of Sadie's crimes comes to light. The police uncover a trail of fraud, embezzlement, and blackmail stretching back years. It seems Sadie had been planning her revenge long before she ever met Jack. And then there's Liam, my other son, the one I thought had betrayed me along with Sadie. When he finally comes to see me, his face is etched with shame and remorse. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispers, his voice choked with tears. I never meant for any of this to happen. Sadie, she had something on me, something I couldn't let Jack find out about. My heart aches for my broken, misguided boy. What did she have on you, Liam? He takes a shuddering breath, avoiding my gaze. I embezzled money from Jack's company years ago. I was in debt, and I didn't know what else to do. Sadie found out, and she used it to blackmail me into helping her. Anger and disappointment war with the overwhelming love I feel for my son. Oh, Liam, why didn't you come to me? To Jack? We would have helped you. Liam shakes his head, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I was too ashamed. I thought I could handle it on my own, but Sadie, she's a master manipulator. She made me believe that I had no choice but to do what she said. I pull my son into my arms, holding him tight as he sobs against my shoulder. It's okay, Liam. We'll get through this together, as a family. And we do. Jack files for divorce and sole custody of Avery. using Sadie's confession and the evidence from the memory card to prove her unfit as a mother. Liam turns himself in for his role in the embezzlement, ready to face the consequences of his actions. Through it all, Avery remains our shining light, our reason to keep going. With Sadie behind bars, Jack and I work together to give her the stable, loving home she deserves. "I love you, Grandma," she whispers one night as I tuck her into bed, her little arms wrapped around my neck. Tears sting my eyes as I hug her close, marveling at the resilience of this brave, beautiful child. "I love you too, sweetheart, more than anything in this world." As I watch her drift off to sleep, I feel a sense of peace wash over me. For so long I'd been consumed by anger and bitterness, by the need for revenge against the woman who'd stolen my family. But now, with Sadie gone and my sons by my side, I realize that the only thing that truly matters is the love we have for each other. We may be broken, but we're not beyond repair. With time, patience, and the unshakable bond of family, I know we'll heal. We'll find our way back to each other, stronger than ever before. And that, in the end, is the sweetest revenge of all. 5 years have passed since Sadie's arrest, and life has settled into a new normal. Jack and Avery moved in with me after the divorce, and together we've built a home filled with love, laughter, and healing. Avery, now a precocious 10-year-old, has blossomed under our care. Gone is the timid, frightened child she once was, replaced by a confident, vibrant girl who lights up every room she enters. Today, as we celebrate Avery's birthday, I can't help but marvel at how far we've come. The backyard is filled with balloons and streamers, the air thick with the scent of barbecue and the sound of children's laughter. Jack catches my eye from across the lawn, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He looks lighter, unburdened by the weight of Sadie's betrayal. In the years since the divorce, he's thrown himself into being the best father he can be, determined to make up for lost time. As I watch him scoop Avery into his arms, spinning her around until she shrieks with glee, my heart swells with pride and gratitude. My son, my brave, resilient boy, has come so far. And then there's Liam, the prodigal son returned. After serving his time for embezzlement, he's worked hard to earn back our trust, to prove himself worthy of a second chance. It hasn't been easy, but slowly, surely, we've welcomed him back into the fold. Avery adores her Uncle Liam, and he dotes on her in return, showering her with affection and attention. As the party winds down and the guests start to leave, Avery bounds over to me, her face flushed with excitement. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" I smile, pulling her onto my lap. "Of course, sweetheart, what is it?" Avery fidgets, suddenly shy. I was wondering, would it be okay if I called you Mom? Tears spring to my eyes at the unexpected request. "Oh, Avery, are you sure that's what you want?" She nods, her little face solemn. "You've always been like a mom to me, Grandma. You take care of me, and you love me, just like a real mom should. And I love you too." I hug her close, my heart bursting with emotion. "I would be honored to be your mom, Avery. I love you more than anything in this world." Jack, who's been listening nearby, comes over to join us, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Avery, and I know it's what your grandpa would have wanted too." We sit there for a long moment, holding each other tight, basking in the warmth of our little family. It's not the family I ever expected to have, but it's the one I cherish with every fiber of my being. Later that night, as I tuck Avery into bed, she looks up at me with sleepy eyes. "Mom, can you tell me a story about Grandpa?" I settle beside her, stroking her hair as I begin to speak. "Your grandpa was the kindest, most loving man I ever knew. He would have adored you, Avery, just like I do." As I spin tales of Tom's gentle heart and quirky sense of humor, I feel his presence all around us, watching over our little family with pride and love. We've been through so much, endured so many trials and heartaches. But we've emerged stronger, more united than ever before. Sadie tried to destroy us, to tear us apart with her lies and manipulations, but in the end, she only brought us closer together, forging an unbreakable bond that will last a lifetime. As I look around at my son, my granddaughter, and the home we've built together, I know that this is what true happiness feels like. This is what it means to be a family. And no matter what the future holds, no matter what challenges we may face, I know that we'll face them together. Always.